It was a breezy Tuesday afternoon when Yvette decided she needed a new lunch spot. Her usual sandwich place was, so, last year, according to her trendy friends, and she was determined to keep up. Word around town was that a cafe on Poplar Street had just opened, offering some of the strangest but allegedly most delicious dishes anyone had ever tasted. So she hopped off the bus one stop early and marched straight toward the large hand-painted sign that read, in swirling script, "Welcome, prepare to laugh, then eat." The storefront was unassuming, marked only by a door with a bright red handle and a single window showcasing a bizarre display of plastic bananas wearing sunglasses. Inside, the decor was so minimalist it passed right into eccentric. There were only a few tables, each with mismatched chairs. The walls featured framed menus crossed with cartoonish chalk doodles. A short line of curious patrons stood ahead of Yvette, scanning the blackboard menu above the counter. The blackboard boasted an elaborate list of unrecognizable dish names: Taco to the Hand, Excellent Adventure, Time Flies, Curry on My Wayward Bun, and dozens more. Each name made less sense than the last, and the confusion in the air was palpable. Yvette joined the line, leaning forward to see if there was any description beneath the clever titles. But all she saw were quick, pun-riddled slogans. For instance, beneath "We Need Dough" was a brief line reading, "For those times when you need some bread in your life." That hardly clarified anything. She watched one customer at the counter, a middle-aged woman dressed in a neat blazer, tapping her foot in frustration. "But what is serial offender?" the woman asked the cheerful cashier. The cashier, a young man with a shock of curly hair, beamed. "Our weekly special. You see, it's a zany twist on a classic morning treat. Flattened cereal bits, sautéed with sweet onions and served with yogurt sauce. We promise it's a breakfast crime you won't mind committing." "It's downright sinful." The woman blinked several times, trying to parse his explanation. Eventually she stammered, that doesn't really answer my question about taste, but I guess I'll try it." "Excellent choice." The cashier rang her up, scribbled something on a notepad, and handed it off to the kitchen. "Please take a seat, we'll be right with you." When it was her turn, Yvette stepped up, determined to make sense of all these puzzling choices. The cashier greeted her warmly, flashing that bright smile again. "Welcome. It's your first time here, isn't it?" Yvette nodded. "It is. Could you please make a recommendation that's, easy to understand?" He flipped his notepad, which was covered in colorful doodles of cartoons and punny phrases, and asked, "Do you want something meaty, or are you more into veggies, or maybe a sweet treat?" Yvette thought for a moment. "Maybe I'll start with something small. Is there, I'm almost afraid to ask, but is there a soup?" "Of course," the cashier said, pointing to the blackboard. "We have missed opportunities, which is our take on a mushroom miso soup. It's served with a swirl of mustard foam." "Mustard foam on miso soup?" Yvette exclaimed, her face scrunching in confusion. "That sounds unusual." "Oh, you're in for a treat," he said, tapping the board. "Then there's our French myth dip, which is basically a take on French onion soup but with a mythical twist. We add a dash of dragon's breath chili flakes, super spicy but oh so delectable." Though she was wary, Yvette kind of liked the sound of a spiced-up French onion. "Okay," she said, "let's do the French myth dip." "I'll trust you on this one." He jotted down her order and grinned. "Perfect. And perhaps you'd like some bread on the side? Our bready or not here I crumb special?" She pursed her lips, half amused, half terrified of what that could mean. "Sure. Why not?" After placing her order, she found a small table by the window. She noticed the other patrons looking around, some shaking their heads at the decor, some nervously laughing as they tried to decipher the puns on the menu. On one wall, she saw a sign reading, "Please have pun but don't go overboard." Next to it, a tall, thin man wearing a floral apron was scolding a blender that refused to start, muttering something about power trips. She assumed he was the chef. The cafe's ambiance was oddly charming in its confusion. A jazzy tune played softly in the background, but it would occasionally be interrupted by a recorded pun or a riddle broadcast over the speakers. something the cafe called food for thought. Between the music, she heard messages like, "What did the grape do when it got stepped on? It let out a little whine." Cue the staff's laughter, which only served to heighten the sense that everyone here was in on some big silly secret. When her soup arrived, it came in a bowl shaped like a mythical dragon's head. The soup itself was a rich golden brown, topped with gooey cheese that looked as if it had been carefully drizzled to form scales. Yvette thought it smelled divine, but she braced herself for the heat. The server set down a basket labeled "Breadly to Rock and Roll," full of small baguette slices that had pun-etched crusts, though Yvette couldn't read them without bringing them up dangerously close to her face. She picked one up, noticing that it said "Carb Diem," and burst out laughing. She dipped the bread in the soup, took a careful sip, and felt a pleasant warmth flood her taste buds. The flavors were both comforting and startling, with a slow-burning spice from those dragon's breath flakes. Whatever pun-laced method they employed, it was clearly working. She slurped happily, letting the cheese stretch from her spoon to her lips, ignoring any stares she might have garnered. For the first time since she'd entered, the confusion melted into appreciation. Across the room, she could see the blazer-wearing customer gingerly picking cereal bits out of what looked like a stir-fry, expression torn between horror and curiosity. Despite the questionable technique, the woman clearly found something to enjoy about it. Her eyebrows, though knitted, occasionally shot up with impressed surprise. Yvette smiled to herself, feeling a sense of camaraderie in this bizarre place. It was as though everyone had entered a secret dimension where logic was replaced with linguistic gymnastics, yet somehow the food was still good. She was halfway through her soup when the cafe's main door flew open, and in walked a whirlwind of energy in the form of a local food critic named Preston Blaine. He was known around town for his scathing, flamboyant reviews, and he often wore a wide-brimmed fedora and a deep crimson scarf, whether it was snowing or 90 degrees. He had apparently heard the same rumors of pun-based recipes, and he looked more than ready to unleash an epic critique. Preston sauntered right up to the counter, leaned dramatically on one elbow, and in a loud voice declared, "I'll have your biggest gastronomic monstrosity, the one that best defines your cafe's unique approach." The cashier blinked, rummaging through the menu in his mind. "Absolutely, sir," said the cashier, beaming as always. "May I suggest our signature item, the Great Batsby? It's a literary burger brioche bun, seared patty with green tomato eyes, and a sauce so mysterious we only refer to it as shh. Sauce, all layered with exquisite cheese that's apparently the talk of the town." Preston raised an eyebrow, seemingly unimpressed. "Fine. I suppose I must try the Great Batsby, even if the name alone gives me hives." He brushed imaginary dust from his jacket and took a seat at the center table, which had an unobstructed view of everyone else. Yvette watched with interest, suspecting that she'd witness either a meltdown or a eureka moment from the outspoken critic. Meanwhile, the cafe bustled with small interactions. A couple in the corner argued about whether curry on my weird bun was intended to be a sandwich or some kind of weird pastry. The staff delivered taco to the hand to an elderly gentleman who seemed far more thrilled with the pun than with the meal itself. In the background, that single chef in the floral apron hustled around, stirring large pots and flipping what looked like pancake tortillas, possibly the Tortilla Story special. Yvette decided to extend her culinary adventure to a second dish, though she wasn't quite sure what to pick. She returned to the counter and asked the cashier, "Do you have anything sweet? Maybe a dessert, or is that also a pun-based riddle?" His smile widened. "Absolutely. We have a variety of pun-based desserts. Let's see, we have tiramisu, a playful twist on tiramisu that includes peppermint tea and chocolate flakes, or our life of pie, which is a cross between pumpkin pie and lemon tart. Somehow it works. Then there's our brownie points dish, which is literally just a plate of brownie bites shaped like punctuation marks. You can get parentheses, commas, or exclamation points, depending on your mood." Yvette stared in awe for a moment before bursting into laughter. "I'll go with the life of pie, please. I'm too curious not to try it." The cashier nodded, scribbling on his notepad again. "Wonderful choice. One slice of existential pastry wonder coming right up." As she took her seat again, Yvette noticed Preston was about to receive his great Batsby. All eyes seemed to converge on him. While he was known for dramatic critiques, the cafe was known for zany surprises, so something was bound to give. When the burger arrived, it came on a plate shaped like a book cover. The top bun was emblazoned with a neat swirl of green relish, making it look like a fancy crest. The server placed it gently in front of Preston, reciting a well-rehearsed line. He had one of those rare burgers that you come across 4 or 5 times in life, that you can taste forever. At the cringe-worthy reference, Preston's face contorted into something between amusement and disgust. Still, even food critics must eat. Preston lifted the burger carefully and took a deliberate bite. Everyone watched him chew in silence. Then, to the shock of the entire cafe, he closed his eyes, placed a hand to his chest, and sighed, "Oh my goodness." Whatever was in that shaw sauce had apparently knocked him right out of his cynicism. For a moment, he seemed to float in a euphoric haze. The hush broken. Other customers exchanged glances of mutual astonishment. Yvette could hardly hide her grin. "This is scandalously delicious," Preston managed between hurried bites. "Yes, it's absolutely ridiculous. But that sauce, oh, that sauce." Elated by the critics' reaction, the staff quietly erupted into low-key cheers. Even the blender in the corner gave a happy whir as if it had overheard the praise. The chef in the floral apron peeked out from the kitchen, nodding in satisfaction before returning to the stove. Shortly afterward, the server brought Yvette her dessert, life of pie. The slice was a warm shade of pumpkin, topped with a drizzle of something lemony and a sprinkle of spices. A small, decorative swirl of whipped cream formed a question mark at the top. She took her first bite, and her mouth was met with a creamy, earthy sweetness contrasted by bright citrus. It was odd, but dazzled her taste buds in a strangely harmonious way. She found herself letting out a little giggle. It was fun discovering how these flavors danced together, especially given their pun-based premise. As she savored her pie, Yvette found herself hoping that others in town would give this cafe a chance, despite its baffling menu. She could see that behind every cringeworthy pun lay genuine culinary creativity. The staff, though eccentric, cared deeply about providing a memorable experience, one that perplexed, entertained, and delighted in equal measure. A loud clang from the kitchen drew everyone's attention. The chef emerged, wiping his hands on his apron. "Excuse me, dear guests," he announced, in a voice as theatrical as Preston's mannerisms. "We're about to introduce a brand new item to the menu, and we'd love a volunteer to taste test." He scanned the room, pointing a wooden spoon at random. "Ah, you there in the window seat. Would you do us the honor?" Yvette turned around to see if anyone else was by the window, but indeed, it was only her. She swallowed the last bite of her pie, realized all eyes were on her, and gave a small wave. "Sure," she said, standing. "I'd love to." The chef beamed. "Fantastic." He dashed back into the kitchen and reappeared, carefully carrying a bright purple dish on a square plate. "I present to you all the trimmings, the rhyme of thyme and lime," the chef cleared his throat proudly. "A luscious grilled chicken marinated in thyme-infused lime juice, served on a bed of colorfully seasoned vegetables. The vegetables are spiral cut, so we like to call them coil me maybe, and, well, you get the idea." Yvette approached with cautious excitement. The dish smelled marvelous, fresh herbs, tangy citrus, and a toasted warmth that suggested a perfect sear. With the entire cafe watching, she took one piece of chicken from the purple dish and guided it to her mouth. Tender, juicy, bursting with flavor, she found herself nodding enthusiastically before she could even manage a word. "This is incredible," she proclaimed. "I love the time-lime combo." A round of applause and laughter spread through the cafe. Yvette felt her cheeks flush, though it was worth it to see the chef's proud grin. "And what shall we rename it for the menu?" the chef asked, smirking. "Got any puns of your own?" Yvette blanched. She hadn't prepared for that. Searching for an idea while the crowd stared, she laughed nervously. "I'm not sure I can top your creativity. Maybe lime after time? Or it's about time we lime." The chef's eyes lit up. "Oh, that's perfect. Perhaps we'll integrate both. Lime after time, it's about time we lime," something along those lines. "Thank you for your participation." He bowed slightly, whisking the plate back to the kitchen amid scattered applause. As the bustle died down, the cafe calmed into a gentle murmur of chatter. Some customers were finishing up, while new ones trickled in. Yvette considered heading out herself, but felt a spark of curiosity about one more detail: the place's backstory. She had to know what possessed these people to run a cafe entirely on puns. So she approached the cashier once more, this time leaning on the counter conspiratorially. "I have to ask," she said, "how did this cafe come to be? Why so many puns?" He looked around, then leaned in as well, as if revealing a secret. Her founder is a retired English teacher who fell in love with cooking. She was determined to make food less intimidating and thought humor was the gateway to curiosity. People come here thinking it's silly, but they stay for the flavors. Ultimately, we believe that laughter is the best appetizer. Satisfied, Yvette beamed. "I have to say, it really works. Confusing, sure, but it works." He seemed genuinely touched. "Thank you. It's nice to hear that folks appreciate our weirdness." Before leaving, Yvette couldn't resist ordering one last treat to go. The cashier recommended Donut Give Up, described simply as a lavender-glazed donut that reminded everyone to keep going in life despite pastry pitfalls. She paid for her order and waited a few moments, observing the cafe's unusual harmony, chaotic puns, scattered laughter, and the rich aroma of freshly cooked dishes. She had never encountered a place with such a devoted following for comedic culinary creations. Moments later, her donut arrived in a small paper bag covered in more pun-filled design. She waved goodbye to the cashier and headed out, the little bell above the door chiming like a farewell fanfare. Outside, the late afternoon sun glowed warmly on Poplar Street. A small line was forming near the entrance. Word had apparently spread quickly, with the cafe's puntastic approach acting like a magnet for brave, or at least curious, foodies. On the bus ride home, Yvette pulled out her phone and began typing a message to her dinner club group chat, which included the trendsetters who'd urged her to find someplace new. She couldn't help but gush about her experience. Sure, the puns were painful at times, but they were also endearing. There was a genuine heart behind each excellent adventure, and taco to the hand. She finished her text, adding a quick note: "Trust me, you'll be confused, but you'll love every minute of it." When she got back to her cozy apartment, she made a small pot of tea to sip alongside Donut Give Up. She carefully unwrapped the purple glaze from its paper bag, noticing that it had a message piped onto the donut's surface: "Our puns glaze over all troubles." She rolled her eyes good-naturedly. With a soft chuckle, Yvette bit into the donut, appreciating the subtle floral note of the lavender. As she chewed, her mind drifted back to the swirl of comedic chaos at the Cafe Fund. Memories already forming after just one visit. She imagined the staff, probably still cracking jokes and brainstorming new dish titles that would puzzle the next wave of patrons. She pictured the chef in his floral apron, passionately tinkering with flavors while weaving new puns into the menu. Maybe tomorrow they'd debut something like Shake It Off milkshakes that had pop song pun references, or a fish dish dubbed Tuna Have to Laugh. The possibilities were endless, and endlessly appetizing. Just as she finished her donut, her phone buzzed. One of her best friends from dinner club had texted back, intrigued by the enthusiastic review. "We have to go together," the message read. "I want to see if that pun stuff is for real," Yvette smiled in anticipation. She was more than happy to be the unofficial guide for anyone willing to take the comedic plunge. After all, once you'd navigated mustard foam on miso soup, everything else in life seemed positively straightforward. That night, she jotted down a few thoughts in her journal before bed. She titled the entry "Confusion and Delights," summing up the day's adventure. She wrote about how sometimes stepping outside of our comfort zones leads to the most memorable experiences. Sure, not every pun had landed perfectly, and she still wondered who would willingly eat cereal mixed with onions, but the overarching joy she felt in that quaint cafe on Poplar Street was undeniable. In the coming weeks, Yvette returned to that pun-filled haven multiple times. She introduced new friends to the brownie points punctuation shapes, or the tortoise and the hare stew, whatever that ended up being, and even encouraged some of her old coworkers to hold a meeting there if only to watch them scratch their heads at the pun-filled water pitchers labeled Wet Your Whistle or H2O. Over time, the cafe became a beloved local gem, the kind of place you might shake your head at but secretly plan to visit again. People who once rolled their eyes at the mention of pun-based dishes found themselves craving the holy macaroni, lamenting that no other mac and cheese could hold a candle to those indescribable spices. Food critic Preston Blaine published a surprisingly warm review, though it was peppered with disclaimers about his hatred of puns. He praised the unconventional brilliance lurking behind the comedic facade. And so, the most confusing cafe in town wore its perplexity like a crown. It thrived not in spite of its ridiculousness, but because of it. Day after day, hungry patrons stumbled through the door, giggled at the kaleidoscope of pun-laced menu items, and left feeling a little lighter, partly because of laughter, and partly because the food was just that surprisingly good. Yvette, for her part, continued to frequent the cafe whenever she needed a pick-me-up. Whenever life got too serious or problems seemed too big, she'd head over to that unassuming storefront on Poplar Street. She knew there she'd find a staff that loved to make jokes, a chef who redefined the concept of bold flavors, and a room full of strangers bonding over a shared sense of confusion and glee. As she walked in one evening, the cashier recognized her immediately. "Back for more puns?" he asked with a playful sparkle in his eyes. "Absolutely," Yvette replied, stepping right up to the counter. "Hit me with your best shot. I'm ready to groan, laugh, and devour something puntastic." He chuckled, already scribbling on his notepad. "All right, how about, oh, kale, yeah. We got a new kale salad tossed with a fruit medley, topped in a spiced honey dressing." "That sounds brilliant," she answered. And as she glanced around at the chaotic creativity that defined this place, she couldn't help feeling that she'd discovered something truly special. Because at the crossroads of confusion and delight, at that juncture where puns somehow enhanced flavor rather than overpowering it, was where real culinary adventure began. So she took her seat, prepared for whatever delightful oddity would land on her plate next, confident that it would come with a side of silliness and eager for another helping of the cafe's signature blend. A dash of puns, a sprinkle of confusion, and a hearty ladleful of genuine warmth.